Hello and welcome to Dad's Desk. This is Rusty. In this series of videos, I'm going to discuss how to use a Visual Basic project to connect to a Microsoft Access database, and then use SQL commands to maintain the database by adding, updating, deleting, and looking up records. There are a number of different ways to accomplish these tasks. The method that I will be showing you is not necessarily the best, just one that I have used for several years now. In fact, I will try and demonstrate a couple of different styles throughout this series. Now, on my flash drive, you will see that I have created a Project SQL folder. Within that one, that's where I have the Visual Basic project stored. I also have the two databases that I will be talking about. This one is called accounts.accdb, the later version of Microsoft Access, and this one is accounts.mdb, an earlier version. These are my backups, or my originals. The databases that I will be accessing, I have placed within my Project SQL folder, so if I open up that one, and then within the bin debug folder, you will see I've placed copies of them right there. Those are the ones that we will be accessing. Actually, we'll only access one at a time. Now, the project itself, I've gone ahead and created, and I want to discuss just a little bit at this first tutorial on how I design things. The form itself, and in fact, all of my objects, I like to use a 3-character lowercase prefix followed by capitalizing the first letter of each word, kind of some camel casing, if you will, here. Okay? For the form itself, I have named it FRM for form customer.vb, and I've set the start position to center screen. I think that works really well, so my user will always see it in the same location. For the label boxes, I use the prefix of LBL, so you will see here I have LBL heading, LBL custno, LBL fname, LBL lname, and then down here there's an LBL lookup just for the text, and this message, in case something goes wrong, is LBL message. I changed the font color, and the visible property is set to false, so we only see it if something goes wrong. For the text boxes, this one is txt custno, txt fname, and txt lname. You will see as we run a project that the read-only property by default is set to true. Also, the max length, because I'm matching up the max length with the table in my database that we will look at in just a moment, to the same sizes, or the number of characters. So for the first name, I have a max length of 20. On lname, it's 30, and for the customer number, it's 4. So if we take a very quick look at the database itself here, let's just open that back up, and we'll open up this database. And I have several different tables. Now, normally I would call these with the prefix of TBL, but I just did not in this instance. We'll only reference the customer table in this series. The other tables will be in future videos. So I'm going to open up that, and you can see I have custno, fname, lname, and if we go and look at this, the custno field has a size of 4, fname is 20 again, and lname is 30. The reason for doing that is because I don't want my user to type in more characters than what can be saved into the database itself. Now, depending on your version of Visual Studio and your operating system and even Microsoft Access, you might find some connection issues with the accdb database. If you do, Microsoft has the drivers out there. There's a couple of them for different versions of Microsoft Access. I did have that issue. I went out to Microsoft, downloaded the updated drivers, and everything now works fine. So if you experience that difficulty, just search Microsoft's site and you can find those drivers for the different databases. Okay, for the buttons, getting back to our form here, the buttons, I have btn as a prefix for btn first, btn prev, btn next, btn last, btn add, and btn lookup, and we'll add more buttons as we go through this series. For the combo box, I have cbo for combo box, lookup fields, the sorted property is true, and the items, I have them in here as so we can search by a particular field for customer number, last name, and first name, just appearing such as that. So let's go ahead and get started on designing this one, just so we can connect into the database and then do some basic navigation. So I'm going to double click on the form, and you will see that I have added my documentation earlier. I like to keep a basic documentation so I have an idea of what's going on. Now, to connect into the databases itself, we'll come down and create a couple of variables. For the accounts.mdb database, we'll say dimension, and I'm going to name this one CONN for connection, string, maybe, and you will see that my typing is not the best in the world sometimes, as a string variable, and it's equal to double quotes provider equals Microsoft .jet.oledb .4.0, and then a semicolon, double quote, because I kind of like to keep this on 2 lines. I think the readability is better for me than a spacebar, an ampersand, spacebar, underscore. That just lets us know that it's going to continue on the next line. Then double quotes data source equals accounts.mdb. Double quotes. There we go. Now, for the ACCDB database, I'm just going to copy those 2 lines, hide them, Control C to copy, Control V to paste, and I'm going to change the name on this to just CONNSTR1, so I have 2 different names. Then the provider will be Microsoft, but instead of Jet, it's going to be Microsoft.ace.oledb, and instead of 4, it's going to be 12. Okay, and then we'll come down here and change this to ACCDB. Bingo, just like that. Now I'm going to create a few more variables in this one tutorial, and then I'll probably stop just so we can kind of see how everything works. But we'll get we'll create these variables: dimension int new cust number. Okay, and this is going to be an integer variable, so I'll define it as integer. And I want to know how many or what location I am within the database, so I'm going to say dimension int row location as integer. And then for my SQL command, I'm going to store that into a string variable, so I'll say dimension str for string, maybe, there we go, data source as string, and I'm going to do a remark statement here that says used for the SQL statements. There we go. And then the last one, right, or next to the last one, I'm going to say dimension DT as new data table. Okay, and I'll create a Boolean variable that I might use later on within the adding and everything, so I'll say dimension BLN data error as Boolean equals false. There we go. So that's all of the variables that I'm going to need on this one. Let's go down now and see if under the form load, if we can connect into that database very quickly here. So I'm going to say loads the database, remark statement, and displays the first record. Okay, after that I will say str data source equals double quotes select, and I like to put these SQL statements in all capital letters. That's kind of a standard. Asterisk, meaning all fields from the table customer that we looked at earlier. Okay, and then I'll say dimension data adapter, there we go, as a new OLEDB data adapter. Let me scroll down and highlight that and press tab, parentheses str data source, comma, and I'm going to connect into the ACCDB database, so that's going to be CONNSTR1, close parentheses. Very good. Then I'll say data adapter dot fill parentheses DT, the data table, and then to kind of clean things up, data adapter dot dispose, open close parentheses. Very good. Now, what if on this one we do not have any rows? What if it's a blank? There's nothing in that particular table. So what I want to say here is if dt dot rows dot count equals 0. Then, if that is the case, a little with me statement there that I like to use, we'll say .lbl message.text text equals double quotes, whoops, no records found, double quotes, and .lbl message .visible, oops, come back here, .visible equals true. Now, if that is not the case, so after the end with, but before the end if statement, we'll say else, another little with me, we'll say, and let's scroll that up so we can see it a little bit better there, right? We will say .lbl message .visible equals false. We'll just hide that, and then we'll display the first record. So .txt cusno.text equals dt, the data table, rows, parentheses 0, okay? And remember, this is going to be the first row because it's indexing, and indexing starts at 0. The count starts at 1, but indexing starts at 0. Item, and I want the first field, which also is 0, okay? Then we'll say .txt fname text equals dt rows sub 0 or parentheses 0 item sub 1, and then .txt lname text equals dt rows parentheses 0 oops item sub 2. Very, very good. Okay, and that is everything we need. Okay, when I click on Start right here, or F5, either one, that's going to automatically save my project and load it, going to the database, the ACCDB database called Accounts, located in my bin debug folder. So let's give this a try. So we'll just press Start, or F5, it compiles, and there we go. So it has loaded up the first record in my database. Now, in the next series of tutorials, we'll start working with the navigation of these particular buttons, okay? But as always, thanks for watching.